Welcome to the hut. Most of you will have been here for one event or another, but have you been upstairs to the Murphy-Gordon Military Museum? If you have, chances are you were greeted by Tim Belford. He's taken on the responsibility of curating the many artifacts donated to the museum. This is a place where the stories of townshippers who have been affected by war are shared with the community at large. And Tim is a great storyteller.
This is the Shubrick record, Welcome Home to the Boys. The reason I collected it, boys from Barrie who were with the Royal Rifles in Hong Kong, 31 of them, all of who either died or were imprisoned. The population of Barrie in those days must have been about 1,500. 31 of their young men ended up in dead or in prisoner of war camps. The museum actually got its start, I think, about 1975. Two of our members, Charlie Gordon and Ron Murphy, got involved. Ron was the president of the Branch 318 at the time. He was a veteran of the Second World War, as was Charlie Gordon. Ron and Charlie thought we really should have a space devoted to the remembrance of those who died and fought in Canada's wars. Soldiers of Cookshire and vicinity in the Great War. Each town did things. And this is a lovely little book with photographs and little biographies of all the people from the Cookshire area that enlisted in the First World War. What they wanted people to know was what these soldiers went through. So we collected a lot of uniforms and that, but we collected a lot of very human things. There are canteens that they carried with them. There are mess kits. There are diaries. There are photographs. On the wall over there is a plaque, and it's covered with letters. And those were letters that were sent from Ray Smith, who was a prisoner of war in Hong Kong and in Japan for a year and a half, to his family. And he kept copies of the letters they sent back to him. So we have those. And if you want a personal look at the history, those kind of things are invaluable.
As it turns out, Ray Smith contributed many interesting things to the museum.
Here's my favorite. In this package, there are 2 cigarettes, but there was no tobacco. So what do you think they smoked? As Ray put on his envelope, hair tobacco. Once you got your hair cut, you saved it, you rolled it, and smoked it. Now, why would Ray save the cigarettes? Well, because he wanted people to know the kind of things that Hong Kong prisoners went through. We have 2 of the Hong Kong vets that wrote their own personal stories right after they were freed in 1945. We have all kinds of personal memorabilia. There was a lady who lived in Lennoxville and in East Angus named Marion Ward Westgate. She had 3 sons that went overseas. While they were there, like all mothers, she worried. She was an artist, a very well-known artist at the time. She did everything from sort of carvings to pottery to painting. She decided she would do something to calm her nerves. So every night at 6 o'clock, the BBC News came on, the world news, so she could catch up on what was happening where her sons were. And every night she crocheted what she called a pinwheel in a quilt. She quilted a section. Every night, all through the war, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. It eventually became quite well known as the BBC News quilt.
When talking to Tim, it doesn't take long to understand that these artifacts are more than a collection of objects. They're connections to the men and women of the Eastern Townships whose lives have been touched by war, people whose names we recognize, and whose families we know.
But if you look at the names on this, half the streets in Lennoxville are there, and a lot of the names are still here. The Abbott family, the Huntings, Tyndale, Ward, Norcross. But that's all the people that are listed from the Lennoxville High School in the First World War, and the little red cross are the ones that never came back. The First World War was devastating for the townships, for this area of the world. So many young men went off. The monument in Shubrick tells a story. There's a 50-some-odd Second World War dead. In the First World War, there was 253 or 254. That's 1 in every 100 people in Shubrick died overseas.
Thanks to Charlie Gordon, Ron Murphy, and countless contributors, Tim Belford is able to shed light on the sacrifice that these townshippers made and make sure that we all remember.
It's basically how it started. It was the idea of these 2 men who wanted to remember and wanted people to remember.